Will technology and resilience meet sustainability in the sixth wave of innovation? Warm welcome to Leap here in Heidelberg and online, and a very warm welcome to Sven Deneke from SAP, market leader in digitalization and enterprise systems, and Anders Kloppenborg from Vestas, market leader named as the most sustainable company in the world recently. Very nicely represents the two topics that we want to talk about in this first session. And it's not just an abstract term, sustainability. This is about winners and losers. The question is, will, in the sixth wave of innovation, will sustainability become one of the critical success factors that defines winners and losers in the business field? Those who race to the bottom, who have exploit ever cheaper mass resources in an unsustainable way, or those who build sustainable business models? That is the question. Will the business context change radically? We are right now at the start of the sixth wave of innovation. We'll look at that, at what that means in just a minute. And we also have climate change, biodiversity collapse, and massive resource constraints piling up and coming towards us. And the argument that I'm going to make is that business is not going to become sustainable to avoid climate change. Climate change is going to force business to become sustainable because it's going to have such a heavy impact on all of us. So let's pose this statement: technology innovation, digitalization, sustainable operations, and leadership in the circular economy, plus highest standards of corporate social responsibility, will become critical success factors for business within the next 25 years. That all sounds nice. It's not the case today. Many businesses make massive profits on completely unsustainable business models. And they thrive. That will have to change for us to be able to handle the impacts of climate change. So the question is, when and how will that change? The other question in the room is, what is going on with digitalization and the massive changes in business process in general? So these two things are coming together. The sixth wave of innovation on the long-term innovation cycles that we'll look at in a bit, and climate change are coming together. The question is how and when. Let's start with the first one. We are in the sixth innovation cycle. These are long-term cycles. We'll look at it on the next page that Schumpeter developed as a theory in the middle of the past century. And this one is driven by digitalization. The amount of data that we have on everyone and everything has exploded, has increased exponentially. We know in real time what is going on, or we can know in real time what is going on with everything that matters to our business. You used to know that you placed an order for some goods to be manufactured in China and brought to the US. Now you know exactly where that container is on which ship every second it is moving, if you want to know that. That is a big difference. So let's look at these innovation cycles for a moment. Basically, this theory says that business change is, yes, incremental for a while, and then every once in a while there's disruptive technology change or a pileup of technology change that spurs a complete new level of innovation across the industry. And these are fairly long-term cycles, typically 50, 60 years, but they're getting shorter. The move to water, steam power, then electricity and internal combustion engine, microelectronics and telecommunication. The interesting thing is the timeline at the bottom of this chart. We are now in 2022, right at the point where the previous innovation cycle is being replaced, the fifth is being replaced by the sixth. And that is driven by data. All of these applications, from artificial intelligence, IoT, but also the advances in medicine, if you think of the genome, it's the fact that it's digitized that it becomes useful. And this Sixth wave, it's always, of course, difficult to really pinpoint when something is taking off, but we can see it if we look at the market capitalization of the 10 most valuable companies in the world, according to the stock market. Yeah? You see, in the last 30 years, this has been dominated by car manufacturers, oil and gas, microelectronics companies, brick and mortar retail stores, and so on. Suddenly, now, you see a whole host of companies on here that have only information, digital assets at the core of their business model. They have monetized the value of information, and they're the most valuable companies in the world. An Alphabet, an Amazon, a Tencent. That's a very, very big change. That's where you see the industry really changing. So we're right at the beginning of this sixth wave of innovation. Oil and gas is already starting to be pushed out, but it's still some of the most valuable businesses in the world, and that will, of course, have to change. You also see a Tesla coming on as one of the first companies that drives their products based on a need to change the way we operate to become more sustainable. Whether a Tesla is sustainable or not is another story, but the whole model is based on the fact that we need to get away from carbohydrates in terms of our energy. The second point is climate change. Now, this might sound a bit alarmist, but if you look at the facts, it's pretty clear that we're heading straight for the cliff. And it's pretty clear that nobody is pulling the brake and that we're going to go over it. And it's not the first time we do this. Human societies on a smaller scale have been destroyed many times in the past through a combination typically of overpopulation, deforestation, depletion of the natural resources that they depend upon, and then usually some kind of a climatic change that pushed them over the top. Yeah, and there are many examples of this. If you look at the book Collapse from Jared Diamond, he gives multiple examples of this throughout history. From the Mayans, the Pueblos, the Viking settlements in Greenland, they all did the same. They kept growing, kept using a finite set of resources, and then when they were completely expanded as a population and had depleted their environment, eroded the national resources, came along a couple of dry years, or a couple of cold years, or a couple of warmer years, and that was it. Societies collapsed. The only problem is we're doing that at a global scale now. And we see it happening around us. Just a month and a half ago, rivers in Germany dried up to the degree that we couldn't transport on them anymore. And how cynical is it then to read in the news that we're worried about the fact that we cannot transport 40,000 barrels of oil anymore on the river that dried out because we were burning that oil constantly. Yeah? It also shows the mindset of humanity in that. Same time, we were closing down factories in China for a week because of extreme heat. That's with 1.2 degrees increase in surface temperature versus pre-industrial, just 1.2. And we're already closing down factories because the heat waves are consuming so much energy that we cannot operate there anymore. And this is not factories producing some plastic bags somewhere. This is high-tech industry that feeds into all of your supply chains. So this is real impact that we are already seeing. A survey this year by the ECB of the industry at large in Europe clearly indicated that most businesses, almost all businesses, see the change, the impact of climate change on their cost structure, on their supply chains, on the resilience they need to be in, the increase in insurance costs, and so on. So it is already there. It's already there with 1.2 degrees increase. And if we look at the scenarios that are being projected, the IPCC report just came out in 2022. I'm sure you know these charts that you see on the right side of of the slide here, there are a number of scenarios. From the very optimistic scenario of everybody gets together and stops burning oil and gas and coal, and switches to non-CO2 emitting forms of energy, to the, some say pessimistic, I would say realistic scenario of we just keep going as it is and we just try to grow that. That puts us on a trajectory of somewhere between 3 and 5 degrees by the end of the century. And most of you will remember this 1.5 degrees was kind of called out as the level at which we can avoid catastrophe. But there are no mechanisms in place to stop us from doing this. You'll see this quote at the bottom from the Saudi energy minister. We're still going to be the last man standing, and every molecule of hydrocarbon will come out. There's one thing that humanity will not have shortage of at any time in history, and that's greed and stupidity. We will just keep burning oil and gas as long as we can. So, in terms of these scenarios, if you're thinking about a business strategy, you shouldn't be looking at the most optimistic one. Even the most optimistic one doesn't put us below 1.5. It goes slightly above on this. I think we're heading straight for the most pessimistic version of this. If you looked at this chart from 2001, from the IPCC, there were projections to where we would be today. The most pessimistic projection then was 0.9 degrees. We're at 1.2. We're 33% over the most pessimistic projection. So it's not good news. This part of the presentation is not for kids. I hope you... We're really not on the right track. Even if we complied with all our promises in the Paris Agreement, we would get to 2.7. And we're not complying with that. We're just ignoring it, by and large, if you look at the world on a large scale. They surveyed the authors of the IPCC report, and they all think we'll end up above 3 degrees. Now, we keep talking about degrees, and I also have trouble to imagine what does that even mean. Yes, it will be a bit warmer, there'll be some more floods, there'll be some more drought, the glaciers will be gone. Okay, but what does that really mean? This is what a 4-degree world looks like. The red and the yellow and the orange is uninhabitable. So that's where all of us live. The gray areas is where you can still live with a decent-sized population. Of course, you can put some people in a building with an airco, but you won't be able to grow food at the level to sustain a population in these places. The red zone is uninhabitable because it is extremely hot, extremely humid, and there's a constant barrage of floods and storms and so on. Just now, 1/3 of Pakistan was underwater. That, but 10 times worse, is what you have in the red zone. The yellow zone is Sahara-like conditions. So we will all need to move to Canada, Scandinavia, or Siberia. There's lots of space in Siberia. It's just that somebody is calling the shots there today where I would not want to live. It's a really, really dramatic picture. And it's really hard to imagine even this. We all just go about, oh yeah, we're heading for 3 degrees. Oh, there's a Starbucks, let's get another cappuccino. It's just, it goes in and out. We don't take it into our business strategy and our thinking of what really needs to change. Now, I think that will change within the next 25 years. I think sustainability will, and corporate responsibility will become a key success factor for business within the next 25 years. And the reason I think that, and we already see it in some of the projections, if you look up the 6th wave of innovation, you don't only see digitalization and artificial intelligence, you see many people calling out sustainability as one of the key factors. The reasons are in my view, are in 4 areas, and the most important one is regulation. At some point, the impacts will become so severe that the pressure on politics will start to shift the balance from the lobbyists that try to keep the unsustainable business practices, which are still very profitable, in place, and the lobbies that try to shift to a more sustainable model, because public opinion will start to shift. And we see parts of that regulation already changing. And you do not necessarily have to have the whole world complying with that. If key markets are really stringent about how they regulate, they can dictate most of what happens in the world. But they have to want to do it and have to do it right. For example, the emission standards of the automobile industry in the United States did not change because the United States adopted emission standards across the country. They changed because one piece of the market, 10, 15%, I'm not exactly sure, California, enacted emission standards. And it just didn't make sense for the industry to build Californian cars and Ohioan cars. Yeah? They just built one car, and they made it adhere to the strictest standard. And in that way, the key markets, Europe, US, upcoming market China, they can, if they do it right, dictate and regulate change. And in fact, some of the regulation and, of course, also subsidies play a big role in that. And some of the success of Vestas, for example, our speaker will have that later, comes from early stages of really getting the right regulation and public funding and investment available for that. Consumer behavior. At some point, consumers will start to vote with their wallet and will feel the impact so much that they will want to buy sustainable products. There's, of course, also inherent savings in moving to a more sustainable business model. Being more prudent with resources saves money, not just CO2 emissions. And then, very importantly, these new markets and the circular economy and the new business opportunities. And again, our speaker today from Vestas is a fantastic example of that. It's a complete business, multi-billion-dollar business built up around generating energy in a sustainable way. There are opportunities like this across all industries. So I think those four factors will start to come into play, unfortunately not to avoid climate disaster, that's going to come, but as it comes, these factors will start to become stronger and stronger, will become part of the business strategies of the next decades. So with that, I think technology innovation, digitalization, but also sustainable operations, leadership in the circular economy, and highest standards of corporate social responsibility will become critical success factors within the next 25 years. And we don't have to sit by idly. In the world of business applications, there are already many areas where we from Westernacher as consultants can help our customers to achieve much more sustainable processes in procurement, in manufacturing, in distribution, all across the value chain. So, while some industries will face much larger change than others, obviously the energy industry is the most impacted, all industries will have opportunities to become a thought leader and a first mover in this new industry that will, or new way of doing business that will come, because it will have to come. Global warming is not going to stop at 5 degrees just because somebody put that chart up. If we just keep going and going, it will go even higher. Right? So at some point, we're going to have to change that. So I think the race to the top is on. So let us change our business to make it sustainable. And in many industries, that is not such a massive change. The cost of steel in a car is only a fraction of the car. And purchasing CO2 neutral steel, the cost incremental is manageable for a car manufacturer and for the consumer. We just have to want to do it. We'll have to be forced to do it, I think. But let us also replace business which is fundamentally unsustainable and move to business that is sustainable. Some industries will just have to cease to exist. It's as simple as that. And it's better if you're looking at your business strategy to anticipate that and be ahead of the curve rather than have it hit you in the face when it's there. So let us become leaders in these new business models, which are inherently sustainable, circular, and ethical. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benjamin, for sharing your thoughts with us. I would say let's first of all check if there are any questions from the audience coming in the past minutes. No, obviously not. Then I check with everybody here in the room. Nobody wants to ask, then I do. You just had, like a couple of minutes ago, a closer look at the sixth wave of innovation, and you just mentioned that it's not only about digitalization and artificial intelligence. Sustainability has become a main pillar in here. And you also mentioned that to become more sustainable, the companies have to work on their business strategies. So far, so good. But do you really have the feeling that they are already acting like that?
Some are. Not en masse. So most companies are still in the lip service or greenwashing stage of dealing with sustainability, but many companies are now have now made it really their core strategy to be the sustainable. In most cases, it focuses on CO2 emissions, CO2 neutral companies. So in the Nordics, for example, there are steel and aluminum manufacturers who go out to the market saying, we are the first to provide you with CO2 neutral, emissions neutral steel or aluminum. Of course, you have companies like Vestas who have made it this whole concept of generating energy in a sustainable way the core tenet of their business model. So yes, those business leaders are starting to come up.
Perfect. Then, Benjamin, thank you very much for that great opening.
Thank you.